Okay, so I wanted to share a little bit of how I came into this work and really in a more formal way. So my dissertation study was about communication in the older adult care environment. And what I asked people to do using a technological tool called the Sprout, the HP Sprout computer, I asked people to use this Alvin human figure, um, and I sprayed it gray so it would be a little bit more neutral, and also so that the computer system would be able to pick it up well. One other thing I did is it had a pretty prominent Adam's apple on it before. So I neutralized it a bit by removing that. And though it acknowledged this is a thin body, this is what was standing in for the human body here. And so what participants were asked to do is to pose this figure once to represent themselves, pose the figure a second time to represent someone they communicate with often, and then make marks to represent the communication between those two figures. And then there was a semi-structured interview that happened afterwards. So I wanted to share some of these. So the first image is one where the older adult is the person with all of the question marks, and they're working towards something, which is what that goal is. And the other person, the person they communicate with, was an administrator in the assisted living who was always thwarting her efforts. And she felt like that person was stopping them. No entrance, one way. And looking at this image was really, really profound, right? Kind of shows some of the hierarchy that can happen in communication between those who are in charge and those who are living in an assisted living setting. The second one is so if we go across there, the second one's very simple on the surface of things. And you might even think, oh, it's just pink dots. It's just communication with pink dots. But if you look very closely at those pink dots, they actually spell out the letters HRU, which she told me meant, how are you? So this was kind of a bubbly communication between two people, very simple. The next one in the third row, or the second row, is communication between a husband and wife. And she is the one with the smaller amplifier there, and he's the one with the larger one. And she noted that she wanted to let me know that it was very important that I understood that even though her amplifier was smaller, it wasn't because she had less to say. It was because he was a very tall man with a very loud voice. And so it was just about the sound of things. And you can see here the gesture too, right? The importance of the body language. The third one was completed by an older adult who lived in assisted living, and her sister lived in skilled nursing, and her sister was very close to end of life. And so she really struggled with this at first, and she originally tried posing her sister's figure prone because her sister was in bed on a breathing machine and, required assistance with all of her ADLs. And this woman would go be with her every day. But she said, in reflecting on this image that she made with just these three very simple lines, she said, "Nothing is very complicated. I know that. It comes from my heart. Like if I'm saying it and it's going to her, I would draw it from my mouth to her heart." The third row there shows where communication kind of runs afoul, where we struggle. And so the first one was created by someone in an executive leadership position about her dad who had had a stroke. And so the red line through his brain is that kind of that barrier, and her trying to outpour love and inspiration towards him and feeling like it was very difficult to get that across. And he was coming back at her with a lot of questions. And then the last one there was created by a preteen volunteer who had volunteered with me in memory care for several years. And she talked about the figure that the lines are coming out from the mouth or from the face is her communicating with an older adult. And she talked about realizing that if one mode of communication didn't work, she had many other things she could try. And I wanted to share this one because this was an opportunity for someone to express about their greatest fear. So he created this image about a fall that he had had, and this actually happened to him. And then this was a resident in memory care who used this directive as a way to express his desires about more communication. And so he's not going to wait for someone to come along. And so both of these images actually represented him either sitting passively in a chair or getting up and finding the people that he wanted to communicate with. And we synthesized all of it into a mural, which hangs in one of the assisted living buildings. And this was how they recommended that communication should happen. So it incorporates gesture, eye contact, warmth. And if you look closely within the mural, you actually see the older people telling the younger people how to do it. And that was one of the main findings. I will put the references into the chat in a moment where you can read more about this, but I wanted to share this with you all today.